As some states begin reopening their economies, many restaurant owners are concerned they will have to move tables further apart for social distancing, making it even harder to make the kind of revenue they need to be viable. For more on this, let's wait. It looks like we maybe have Kelly. All right, we have Kellyanne Conway. We were going to talk about restaurants. We didn't have Kellyanne. Now we have Kellyanne. Good to have you. Welcome.
I've been here. I think we had some technical difficulties, but that's
right.
okay.
Well, I'm
Thanks
glad
for
we
having
worked
me
it
today.
Out. We can talk about restaurants. We can talk about deals with the
Absolutely.
Senate and the House. Let's start right there, because in all seriousness, there are a lot of people, small business owners, have been emailing me for a week or so saying they've heard the president and Democratic leaders tout the PPP, and yet some of them can't get through to the SBA. They can't get their banks to actually loan them money. What's your assurances to them this morning that the SBA and the president are going to get to the bottom of that, and where are we on a deal for more money?
The president is committed to doing that. I heard today from our legislative affairs team that they are hopeful we can get a deal this week, and that deal should infuse a whole bunch more of cash, billions of dollars for these small business owners, these mom and pops, Ed, who you're hearing from, I'm hearing from, we're all hearing from, that they want to stay afloat, but they need this money to enable them to make payroll, to cover some of their expenses and overhead. And we've seen these terrible stories. Harvard got $9 million out of the CARES Act, and some people are very much object to that. They've got about a $41 billion endowment up at Harvard. I'm sure that they thought they should participate in it. Companies like Shake Shack have returned their $10 million loan because they recognize that those for whom this was intended to help the most are those who need it the most and are suffering the most. Those mom and pop shops, you know, the local stores in your community, not the franchises. Okay. So that money will be there. Also in this new tranche of money will be about $75 billion more for hospitals, $25 billion more for testing, more for emergencies. So it's supposed to be more flush with cash, and I fully encourage people to keep on applying for the loans and these grants because it's there for them.
So that's big picture, but let's get specific then and try to nail this down. Where are we in terms of the Treasury Secretary, Steven Mnuchin, Democratic leader Schumer, Republican leader McConnell, the whole gang? Where are we at this hour on actually getting a deal?
Well, the secretary feels very confident. He said that yesterday, that a deal is happening. Much better position than we were, say, a week ago. And let's be fair, this president has taken immediate action every time one of these relief packages related to COVID has hit his desk. He has signed it. That $2.2 trillion several weeks ago, he signed it immediately. And may I remind all Americans, fortunately, Ed, that CARES Act passed the Senate unanimously, 96-0. It was bicameral, both chambers, and bipartisan. And we want people to know this is not being overly politicized when it comes to the president's desk. On the way there, sometimes it is. And I would say, you know, when Majority Leader in the House, Steny Hoyer, said, well, Congress is now recessed until May 4th unless there's a quote emergency. Hey, folks, we're in an emergency. We're working here every single day, 7 days a week at this White House and across this country. People have mobilized, private and public sector have mobilized. I'm sure all governors are working overtime as well with their teams. So we need Congress to get back here and make this happen for the American people. They should not be at home. They should be here in Washington getting this money funded for our small business owners and getting up to the president's desk. We're also hearing stories from some of our Catholic schools want to shut down. They need to shut down because of the COVID burdens. I think some of this money should be intended for operations like that if they qualify under 500. So you're talking about mom and pop stores. You're also talking about these companies and these outfits, these nonprofits that people aren't even really considering would be so financially impacted by this. And we want to be able to have them apply as well and help them.
Hey, Kellyanne, it's Sandra. Obviously, the White House is monitoring the situation across the country as the president says he believes that some governors of some states have gone too far with their restrictions on stopping the spread of COVID-19. You've seen the protests that have been emerging, some even calling for gatherings on Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg responded to that, calling it the spread of harmful misinformation. They've agreed to take some of those calls for protests down. What is the president saying about that this morning, the fact that these protests are calling for the end of some of the guidelines that he set to begin with?
Well, first and foremost, we want people to adhere to the CDC guidelines, and we've updated those, Sandra, about less than 2 weeks ago for the 16 critical infrastructure industries. People should read those guidelines. We need physical distancing of 6 feet, wear that face covering, that mask, certainly practice good hygiene.
Some of the protests you've clearly seen the pictures, are breaching those breaching
Correct.
that social distancing line.
Correct. But at the same time, some of these governors have physically distanced from common sense. In Michigan, you could basically smoke your grass but not cut your grass. This makes no sense to many people. And so for them, this is not fomenting domestic rebellion. I look at those people and I see the forgotten men and forgotten women economically. They're saying, look, I'm in a low infection area. I'm asymptomatic, not exposed. I want to get back to work. And let's be fair, today is April 20th. We have millions, tens of millions of Americans right now staring at May's bills. How are they going to meet these bills in May? Their rent, their mortgage, the food for their children, basic necessities in their households. And they're saying, I want to get back to work. The governors have the last word on that. Many of them are working on that, but some have been more concerned about, I think, controlling the populations and protecting them. And the president is just making that clear. But it's the president's guidelines. It's the federal guidelines that are out there that everybody should be adhering to.
I wonder, Kellyanne, if we had Dr. Peter Hotez on earlier, and every expert, including him, says, look, we've got to increase and ramp up testing. But he told us he wants to ask you directly as a medical expert. Is the White House, he understands, and we all understand, mayors, governors, everyone carries some responsibility here. But he said it's going to take the White House to get people back to work by pushing the CDC to have some national guidelines and standards so that mayors and governors in every state municipality know what's going on with testing. Is the White House going to take that responsibility?
I've got some good news there. First of all, testing is the most frequently echoed word here at the White House these days, including in the task force meetings, which I participate in daily. We're very focused on testing. First is diagnostic testing. And so for that testing, we had about 85,000 a month ago. We're now at 4 million. We'll be at 5 million by the end of this month. So that's ramped up significantly. And it's ramped up in the type of testing also. You see at Rutgers saliva test, you see this rapid Abbott test. You see folks really trying to, the FDA approving different testing so that more people can access that. But there's also surveillance testing for surveillance, and there's certainly also serology testing they've talked about. And I think the great news I have for you today is in about 20 minutes, the vice president is expected to lead a call with our nation's governors, the D.C. mayor, the heads of the territories. Again, he had one on Thursday with the president. And they will be talking about testing. One thing Dr. Birx is emphasizing to these governors is we did about 150,000 tests. We're doing about 150,000, I think, a day. We can double that if they ramp up the capacity they have in their state. So Dr. Birx has put together a map that shows you what your testing capacity is in your own state, hoping that these private labs like Quest and LabCorp, your hospital labs, your public labs, that everybody knows what is in their state. It's similar, not completely analogous, but similar to what was going on with ventilators, which is, yes, we are going to supply them. What do you have in your state? What do you actually need? We want to supply the need, not the ask. So there's no question. I think Dr. Birx is telling me today we have 9 platforms, about 1,000 labs, and that for both the antibody and nucleic testing, that you need specificity and sensitivity that we're working on now. But everybody agrees that that is where this is headed next. It is not a perfect system, but we've been building that ecosystem around the clock.
What is also difficult to perfect is just how exactly to reopen the country and get the economy going again. This is an incredibly challenging decision for everyone involved, Kellyanne. How confident is the president in that May 1st date for starting to reopen some areas of the country this morning?
Sandra, I would remind everybody that there is a 3-phased approach to reopening that we have published. It was announced last week. Everybody can access that. I'm sure it's on whitehouse.gov. It's probably on foxnews.com. That's easy to access. And the reason there are phases is because this is data-driven, not date-driven. We have from the beginning always been listening to the medical professionals and the scientists, and we will continue to do that. I was very pleased to hear Dr. Fauci publicly say what he has said privately, which is that he thinks that there's enough testing for phase 1. You can look at his exact quote that we can, if you're looking at phase 1, we can start with that. But we all recognize the balance that is necessary. We recognize this is first a medical crisis, but also financial crisis for many of our hard-hit households in this country. But if you look at those 3 phases, it's never intended to just turn on the button and a light switch. This is more gradual, and it really depends on infection rates, hospital capacity, ICU capacity, ventilator capacity in your area. It also matters if you were ever exposed, if you're asymptomatic. I mean, let's face it, in one workplace, you may have a perfectly healthy 28-year-old male who lives alone, was never exposed, is asymptomatic. He may be in a very different situation than a colleague who's 50 years older than him and it has been exposed or is symptomatic. So I'm sure that the employer will be taking care of both of them, but one may be able to return to work and one may have to wait. You see what we're doing cabinet-wide and administration-wide also, where you've got Sonny Perdue, $19 billion more to help our farmers and the meat packing industry. So we are looking at industry by industry, geography by geography, and never suggesting that you just turn on the light switch. We just want to make sure people see that. Look, the governors want the last say, and the president said, great, you have the last say on whether or not or how to reopen your economies, but somehow they want to delegate and abdicate all the testing to the federal government. We've got to work together, and I'm very happy as someone who's been on all these governors' calls with the president and vice president. I hear an awful lot of collaboration, not competition, and not frustration on those calls. I think some people go on other networks, some governors go on other networks, and they sing a different tune. But there's been a great deal of responsiveness and collaboration between these governors and the federal government. That will continue as we gradually reopen pieces of the economy.
Kellyanne, what about the collaboration or lack thereof with the Speaker of the House? As you know, Nancy Pelosi was on with our colleague Chris Wallace on Fox News Sunday yesterday. Among other things, she said the president is a weak leader, and she said that he has failed in the coronavirus response. You say?
It was such a disappointing interview from the Speaker of the House, who's sitting in her home, not feeling isolated or economically desperate like so many Americans are right now, probably people in her own district. And I thought it was very disappointing for her to just name call and disparage the president personally rather than say, I'm getting Congress back to work this week so we can get more money for these small business owners to stay afloat. For them, it's not a matter of prosperity, it's survival right now. And it shouldn't just be survival of the fittest. It should not be Darwinism or discrimination because you're a small business who's going inventory by inventory or paycheck to paycheck. We should be helping them. That was the whole point of the PPP under the Small Business Administration and Treasury. And I felt that when you've got nothing positive to say, you know, small minds talk about other people. They don't talk about big issues. And I felt it was incredibly disappointing instead of her showing bipartisanship as we've seen all across this country in so many ways. Have you ever seen the country's people and businesses mobilize in such a positive, responsive, uplifting way as we have over the last 5 weeks, Sandra and Ed? It's really remarkable to see, and as a mother of 4 school-age children, it's been fantastic to point out in a completely non-political fashion how many Americans and how much American businesses and volunteers have stood up, offering to help with the food banks, offering to have their parking lots be stand-up field medical hospitals or testing sites, for example. And then we have the Speaker of the House, who we're always told is so smart and so powerful, not say, I'm going to make sure the money is there.
But Kellyanne, just to follow up on some of the video that we've been playing while you've been speaking, it's areas of the country where we are seeing these protests, to circle back to that point. And what the president is saying about that this morning, is he concerned that while they might be protesting, what they say or see are the right reasons to get back to work, or they feel like they're overly restricted? Is the president, is the White House task team concerned that they might be spreading the virus at the same time while they're gathering?
Look, we took great action. The president took immediate action by banning travel from China under tremendous criticism, including by full-on members of the, quote, hashtag resistance in the media, many of them. And he has saved millions of lives in so doing. So we're the ones who have the 15 days to slow the spread and then additional 30 to slow the spread. So we're second to no one in terms of saying, do what you must to slow the spread and keep it that way. But Sandra, were we ever intended to have the entire government and our economy shut down until we have a vaccine? That's really the balance people have to know. We have to learn how to live with the virus while we're doing testing, while we're doing therapeutics, while we're developing a vaccine. And the president is not saying, hey, this state, that community, those kinds of workers in that industry, go, go, go. But remember, we also have critical infrastructure workers have never stopped working. Our truckers, our sanitation, our food workers, certainly our amazing heroic healthcare workers and first responders. So that gives you a good roadmap as to how to reopen pieces of the economy sensibly and smartly.
And we know, as you said, the group of governors will be meeting with the president this morning. We look forward to an update from that. Kellyanne Conway at the White House, thank you.
Thank you both. Take care.